All right, rock and roll. Welcome to the Scorched Earth Political Podcast. I am your host, John. And if you could be so kind, hit the like and subscribe button. It means a lot to us. Here we welcome all, friend and foe, or foe, sinner and saint. We aim for a more raw and honest look at the world's news, the things that are happening that maybe legacy media isn't really dealing with. We're trying to hold power accountable, deal with the corrupt, deal with the greedy. Can't think of anybody who's like that these days, right? And we're taking no prisoners, telling no lies, and let's burn it all down to the ground. All right, let's start out the podcast for this beautiful Monday morning with the very dire and distressing news that President Joe Biden has advanced cancer. Reports are that it has metastasized into his bones. I don't like to see that happen to anybody, regardless of their political persuasion. I joke about, opponents of my political party, and I don't mean it. Everybody's got a life, and Joe Biden has comported himself amazingly well. Yeah, he's made mistakes. In the 90s, he was adamantly against gay marriage. I think a lot of that was the byproduct of his being a very fervent and observant Catholic. But I don't know. I don't know the man. And I have a lot of thoughts about Joe Biden. And granted, he's still alive, but I think this is a nice time to reflect on some of the things he did. I'm going to really deal with one, and where I think he really stood out as a political leader. And it was actually something that was weaponized against him. Hey, look, at the end of the day, when you're president, you get the glory, you get the blame, right? Heavy lies the crown, they say. And I'm going to talk about the Afghanistan withdrawal. And to me, that was truly one of the crowning achievements in his administration. Now, I know all you are out there saying, John, what do you got in that coffee cup? I got jet fuel. It's the only way I can keep up with you rascals. No. So let's go back in history and talk about what Afghanistan and Iraq were really all about, right? And we talk about unfettered power, and we've seen that a couple times in our lives, but probably the most recent was after 9/11. George Bush, his approval ratings went somewhere from 45 to 50% to over 85 to 90% as he went to America, mourned with America, and made a plan to deal with the terrorist who had attacked New York City. And it's funny, even in the seeds of all that bore a great man, and his name was Barack Obama. And if you remember, in 2002, they went to the U.S. Senate to get a declaration of war against basically Afghanistan, which then turned into Iraq. And it was a 95-5 vote. And two of the people who voted against going into Afghanistan were Bernie Sanders. Yes, I love you, Bernie. And Barack Obama, who was a freshman senator from Illinois. And the reason that became such a poignant moment, and honestly, when there's 95 people voting for something, I always wonder, what's the other side of it? And Barack Obama, he could have just done the politically expedient thing and just voted with the mask. There was no harm coming to anybody who voted to go into Afghanistan. There was no political harm. You were only going to have political harm if you voted against it. He did. He said, I don't see the evidence. I don't see that Taliban attacked us. Actually, it came to find out it was Saudi Arabia. The place where Donald Trump is just finding his new BFF in every country, hey, whatever. And that is what springboarded Barack Obama in 2008 with him, to differentiate between himself and Hillary Clinton. She voted for the war. She was a senator from New York, and he, at that time, when 2008 finally rolled around, there was such a negative view in this country about the war that is what propelled Barack Obama into the presidency. Now, to me, that's a real leader. He did not do what the consultants told him to do, what everybody said the political winds were doing. He followed his heart and his conscience, and we're lucky we got a great man out of it. But be that as it may. So George Bush launched the war against Afghanistan 2002 with the approval of the Senate. And then subsequently he went into Iraq. Do we all remember the weapons of mass destruction that, of course, were never found? That it was just another way for Dick Cheney, the evil Dick Cheney, and Halliburton to make some money for the defense contractors. We had to go into Iraq because Saddam Hussein was hiding the Taliban. Of course, he wasn't. Actually, the Taliban hated him more than than they hated us. And then they had the weapons of mass destruction, which of course were never found. We found out later that they basically put Colin Powell in front of the UN with false information. And to my much chagrin, I have not understood when the Democrats had the House and the Senate in subsequent years, how hearings were never held about weapons of mass destruction, and why there wasn't charges against the administration of George W. Bush. That's another thing. But George Bush, towards the end of his 8 years, was starting to realize the war was incredibly unpopular. Americans were dying. There was no victory on the horizon. Actually, the enemies, the Taliban became Al-Qaeda, which became ISIS. They actually splintered and actually gained more power. So what did he do? Oh, God bless him. He signed the U.S.-Iraq Status of Freedom Agreement, in 2008, his last year in office, right before he destroyed the financial markets, right? And he called for the withdrawal of Iraq by December of 2011, and Afghanistan by 2014. Okay? Now, this is a political bullshit trick all these politicians do. And this is where I'm going to get to. They always want some other guy to do it. They sign the agreement. Oh, we can't do it now. It'll be too quick. Blah, 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 blah. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. And we're going to have the other guy deal with it. Okay. So Barack Obama gets elected in 2008. And he actually upholds his part of the agreement. He gets us out of Iraq by 2011. God bless you, Barack Obama. You are a man of your word. But instead of the 2013 for Afghanistan, what he does is the military comes to him and says, look, if we leave now, the Taliban's going to take over the whole country. The whole 10 years we've been there is going to be wasted. We need to leave military personnel, security advisors there to train the Afghani troops to be able to fight the Taliban. Barack Obama says, okay, we're going to do that. So they leave somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 security advisors and troops in Afghanistan. Yeah, here we go. Now we get 2016, and we don't have to worry about that Trump guy coming down the escalator because that guy's a buffoon. Hillary Clinton's going to be wiping it all up. Ooh, funny thing happened on the way to the presidency. Donald Trump became the president. 2016. Now, let us hear different things that he said during his presidential campaign, right? He was strongly in favor of withdrawal from Afghanistan, stating that it was a complete waste and that the troops should come home immediately. This is on the campaign trail, right? Criticized the war. He described the Afghanistan conflict as a terrible mistake and a mess, arguing that the UN had wasted blood and treasure, money. That's the only thing he really understands, right? Questioned U.S. involvement. He questioned the rationale for committing American and women military personnel to this conflict. Said the U.S. asked why the U.S. was building roads and schools for people who hate us. Called for the speedy withdrawal. Okay. He criticized the Afghan deployment for the entire campaign in 2016, right? What does he do when he gets in? Well, I think you can already figure out this, spoiler alert. Doesn't do a goddamn thing. Doesn't do a goddamn thing. What does he do? He pushes the withdrawal to 2021. Ooh, yeah. When he thinks he's going to have his second term. Now, that is what politicians do. Both sides of the aisle. Lyndon Johnson did it, whatever. Nobody wants to be the guy who gets egg on his face. Now, Biden won the election. I hate to tell all the Republicans in the audience, but he won the 2020 election. And what did he do? God bless that man. He said, I am going to honor my word. So in May of 2021, he started bringing a scale down in Afghanistan for a September total withdrawal. Well, this collapsed towards the end of August, and he finally said, okay, we're coming out. We're getting out. It was literally a 36-hour thing. They evacuated all the personnel they could, all the troops, and we had the horrible pictures of C-10 planes going down the runway with Afghani people trying to grab onto wheels, into the plane, and the optics were terrible. I'm not going to disagree with that, right? But Joe went through with it. Joe said, you know what? It's time for us to come home. And he did what a politician should. He did the right thing. How many American servicemen and women, advisors, consultants are alive because Joe made that decision? Yeah, the optics were terrible. It didn't look good. But at the end of the day, he made a decision a lot of other presidents didn't. Okay? And I don't really want to hold Obama's feet to the fire because I think a lot of times he got duped by the military. But okay, whatever. At the end of the day, there's Bush, there's Obama, and there's Trump. Trump didn't do anything. At least Obama took our troops out of Iraq and took the heat for that. Let me ask you this. If Biden had said, we're going to kick that down the road to 2025, do you think Trump would actually have removed anybody? Do you think he would do anything like that? If you do, you're a fool. He wouldn't have done anything. He'd have kicked it down the road to 29, and we would have had another 10 years of U.S. involvement in Afghanistan. Our boys and girls getting killed by Taliban. And you know what happened? The whole country collapsed. It did. It's run by the Taliban. Women aren't allowed out during the day without a male escort. They're not allowed to wear any type of clothes that does not, I believe, honor Sharia law. I mean, it's literally the 14th century there. Okay, whatever. That's what it is. I'm not saying we have to go back in there or whatever it is. It's just a terrible situation. But at the end of the day, Obama was right. You need to build roads, you need to build hospitals, you need to build infrastructure if you want to get the people to believe in you. You are not going to ever convince people with the gun. You're not. Like Charlie Wilson's War with Tom Hanks. You feed the people, they'll respond to you. You shoot them, you just built an enemy. And that's really what it is, right? At the end of the day. And I know I'm going a little long on this segment, but I do deeply appreciate that. There's a lot of things I appreciated about Biden. There's things I wish he would have done maybe a little different. But I do appreciate in the last 50 years, there's a man who took the political heat to do the thing what a president should do, is protect American citizens. And I hope you recover, Joe. 82, it's a difficult thing, that's for sure. But I just want you to know, Joe, and I'm sure you do know, that there's tens of millions of people out there that appreciate what you did for America and that we loved you deeply and that you were a man of honor and that you were a man of dignity. And You showed us what a good human could really be. And we thank you for that. All right, let's move on before I get all misty-eyed here. Hey, I'm a man. Ah. And May 16th, just the other day, unfortunately saw severe weather anomalies in the states of Kentucky, Missouri, and Virginia, killing at least 32 people. Now, with climate change, we're getting more and more of these type of weather anomalies, and they are tragic, no doubt about it. But one of the things I did notice was the Trump administration, when it came into office, immediately cut the NWS, the National Weather Service. Now, what do you need that for? Well, they are involved with NOAA, the National Oceanographic Weather Service, and the Mainland Weather Service. And what they do is they use sophisticated satellites and weather balloons to give you an accurate idea of what is going on in the weather and being able to very accurately predict it for the next 12 hours. Well, the Trump administration, in their draconian cuts, have 8 huge sections around the United States where they are not going to launch weather balloons or have overnight staffers to monitor the weather at night. So at 5 o'clock, okay, Fred, okay, Sally, let's go hit the bar. Don't worry about the weather. Looks like we got a big one. Obviously, they never saw Twister. And those people in those areas have no reliable information of what is coming. The weather balloons are infinitely more accurate than satellite imagery can be. Okay? So I'm not going to say that these people in these areas could have been saved. Well, maybe. Their area was cut. They're one of the eight areas in the country that don't have overnight staffers monitoring the weather. Now, whether or not they could have saved, you don't know what you don't know. But I will guarantee you this. There will be people this year that will die of weather anomalies because there was no overnight staff to warn them. They were not able to get the information that would save their life. I'm going out there and saying, hey, this is scorched earth. This isn't play it safe. You want to play it safe, you go somewhere else, okay? All right. Let's head on down the road here. A federal, some of these stories I look at, I have to read them 2 or 3 times because they are so absurd. It's like there's something out of H.R. Pufnstuf, right? But let's go with it. A federal judge told the Trump administration on Friday that its explanation for invoking the state secrets privilege in the Kilmar Garcia case is inadequate. Oh, what a shock. Describing the government's reasoning for withholding information as, take my word for it. Mm-hmm. The Trump administration lawyers, attorneys have argued that releasing details in open court or even to the judge in private about its efforts to return Abrego Garcia to the United States would jeopardize national security. Now, I don't know if you saw my short yesterday about how they're, quote unquote, using national security to break the unions in the federal government and collective bargaining. Everything is now national security. Now, the funny thing is, what is national security? I mean, is it getting rid of habeas corpus? Is it getting rid of due process? Are those impediments to national security? I don't think so. I think they're the bedrock of our democracy, but they are making this argument across a lot of different fronts that they don't have to tell anybody anything because it is national security. And that's just bullshit. It's just straight bullshit, right? Let's call it what it is. U.S. District Judge Paula Enos of Maryland said she was at a loss for how she can independently determine the nature of the government's concern with the information it provided, the "you got to trust us" defense. I mean, at the end of the day, has the Trump administration built any credibility, any goodwill, any reservoir of truth on anything? You know, this is an administration that in 8 court filings said Abrego Garcia was an administrative error, but there's nothing we could do. Then Donald Trump boasts that he's the most badass president who ever lived, but he can't get an American who is unlawfully deported and incarcerated, he can't get him back. Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, does it? Not a lot is going to make sense for the next 3 years and 9 months. Good luck, all of us. Hold on to your hats. It's going to be a bumpy ride. All right. Finally, let's talk about those that genocidal maniac Netanyahu, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister. And the only reason he is continuing the war is because he does not want to have to deal with corruption charges that await him on the other side of a ceasefire. The people of Israel are not going to take away their president who is orchestrating a war. I understand that. It makes total sense. But at the end of the day, this guy is literally trying to commit genocide for the 2.3 million Palestinians, right? I'm just going to mow them down. I'm going to see if we can export 1 million of them to Libya, the other 1.3 to the Egyptian desert. I don't care. I'm going to suffocate them like an anaconda. I am going to stop food. I'm going to stop water. I'm going to stop humanitarian aid. I'm going to stop medicine. Doesn't matter. I've got them in a box. I'm just going to keep going. All right. So on top of that, Benjamin Netanyahu wasn't happy that Trump didn't happen to stop by for a quick cup of coffee there. Of course, Benjamin Netanyahu didn't realize he doesn't have as much money as the oil-rich Arab states that give off planes, they give resorts, and all kinds of things to work on the president's retirement account, right? That's what he's doing there. Little slush fund for the future, right? Israel launched an extensive ground operation in Gaza on Sunday. In addition to an intense air attack that health officials in the territory say killed over 100 Palestinians and shuttered the last functioning hospital in the territory. One hospital for 2.3 million people. And you thought healthcare in America was a bitch. Okay, let's go with it. The Israeli military ground operation in northern and southern Gaza comes as international mediators push for a progress in the ceasefire talks. Yeah, we're going to see how those go because Israel has no incentive to do it. And even if they do agree to a ceasefire to get the hostages back, I can tell you right now they are going to renege on it. And the Hamas knows it too. You know, they want to get back the hostages. The Hamas wants some hostages. The second Israel gets those hostages, you are going to see an onslaught like you've never seen. What's going to hold them back? Trump isn't. He wants to put a Trump hotel there. Oh, that's great. Hey, after you bomb the area, we got a couple skip loaders and we got a couple land movers and we got a couple steamrollers. We could build the foundation for my new hotel. Maybe that'll be the Trump Library International. You know? Don't worry about it. There's a night deposit so you can put in your bribes. While there's some optimism about the talks on the ceasefire, the breakthrough is looking uncertain. This is CNN reporting. Israel on Sunday indicated its openness to ending the war in Gaza if Hamas surrenders. Hamas has said it will release all the Israeli hostages if there are adamant guarantees Israel will end the war. Wow. Oh, you crazy Hamases. You crazy Hamases. You know, just like Trump is going to make a very stern phone call today to Putin to try and get him to have a ceasefire with Ukraine. Yeah. Israel and Putin are going to do a ceasefire on the same day. It's called never. Well, eventually they will. They're probably going to win. They're going to annihilate. They're going to kill millions of civilians. Yeah, and there's the uplifting news of the day. You know, kumbaya at one, kumbaya all. All right, that's it today for Scorched Earth. I just want to tell you I love y'all. We're in this together, and we're going to win because we're on the side of right, we're on the side of good, and we're fighting for democracy. All right, if you could, hit that like and subscribe button. It means a lot to us. leave some comments, and we'll see you soon on Scorched Earth.